Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shah. I am a Creative Leadership Fellow with the African American Art and Culture Complex, and I'm really excited to be hosting this workshop today on workforce development, resume building, and all things job market with the lovely Antwan. So I'll hand it over to you, Antwan, and ask you to introduce yourself and a little bit about the organization that you work with, Code Tenderloin, and the work that you do there.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name is Antwan Matthews, and I'm originally from Meridian, Mississippi, but I stay in Berkeley, California now. I work with Code Tenderloin as the director of youth programs. And a little background about me: I graduated from Tougaloo College, historically Black college, in biology. Then I moved out here to the Bay Area and started doing consulting work in public health. So working with Code Tenderloin and built out our Empowering Black Youth internship and fellowship. So a little bit of my work is kind of really trying to maximize youth with qualitative and quantitative skill set to higher education and or placement to careers. So addressing financial barriers, etc. And yeah, that's me.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about Code Tenderloin and sort of like its mission?
Yeah, Code Tenderloin is a Black-led organization, and then focus on workforce development and technology, along with public health now, and starting to get more into the research zone as they building out their platform. But initially worked with community members in the Tenderloin and really all throughout the Bay Area, but to address financial needs, housing, job placement, also trying to get past industry jobs. So thinking about ways to become a software developer or get skill set in community development or public health. So linking community members to skill set and case management, and really anything you can think about related to trying to address social determinants in like Black and Brown communities or communities at large, because they do work in the Tenderloin. Um, so Code Tenderloin is, when I think if I had to like really summarize it, I consider it an organization that focuses on community and try to build out programs that best serve that community. As I said, I was able to build out the Empowering Black Youth program, because Tenderloin also has a summer program where they work with youth, up to 300 youth throughout the 10 weeks, doing web development and robotics. So Code Tenderloin is doing so much throughout the year, feeding the community, like addressing personal hygiene. So really substance usage, anything you can really think about, Code Tenderloin really has a stake in it.
Wonderful, wonderful. I really, really am so glad to have learned about this organization. And I specifically also want to hear a little bit about your work with the youth, with the summer program that you mentioned, and sort of like the year-round stuff that you get into.
Okay. And then I could talk about the Empowering Black Youth program, which I designed to be a 19-week STEM education program focused on public health and technology. And we just finished up our cohort because it runs from January through May. And this year, students focused on skill set to gain to build out public health short films, focusing on like identity, expression, thinking about ways of Black and Brown people being in like different fields other than having to be an athlete or just thinking that they need to be a rapper, but exposing our students to an array of fields that Black intellects roam. So anthropology, we had people who just graduated from medical school. So thinking about people who went to USC as well, that focusing on film, having individuals who lead fellowships and design innovation. So really giving them exposure over a 19-week period to design this public health series. So I really work directly with the students to kind of build their skills beyond or before they get to college. So we work with students as young as 13 up to 24. We incentivize the students. So our 10 interns that we work with, we provided them $8,000 a piece over the 19-week period. And we also created a fellowship for our 3 students, our art fellowship for one of the students, and they got paid $11,000 a piece. So I find out ways to work with stakeholders, but build out sustainable programs like the EBY program to really allow Black youth to be a little more competitive when they're trying to go to higher education or job placement. Most of the times, if you think about like internships or fellowship, for Black youth, we really don't get that until we're like in college. Sometimes your sophomore year in college. So to expose a 13-year-old to an internship, providing them with a stipend of $8,000, they receiving like an iPad Air, keypads, books, DoorDash. They're being invited to the Golden State Warriors stadium, so Chase Center, being able to put what type of work they're doing in public health, understanding their body, understanding how sexual health affects their body. So, really thinking on an internal level, your most important asset is yourself. So really finding out ways to protect themselves, but also gaining skills at an early age to make them understand that they're getting like a product at the end of the program. So, hard skill set, something they can use for the rest of their life. So being able to be proficient at iMovie, being able to be advanced in Adobe Premiere Rush, giving them softwares that these large tech companies, especially with them being in San Francisco, having that exposure so they can get those 6-figure jobs. So being able to create a program that's going to be everlasting for the Black community. So that's my main focus with Code Tenderloin. But then my other, with me being the director for our OFA program, I'm more behind the scenes, but I do work with the fellows to focus on like their resumes, ways to like express and enhance like their skill set for learning how to do web development, learning about AI and robotics. I think a lot of mistakes people tend to downplay themselves and don't necessarily express themselves fully in your resume, but your resume is really like you in a smaller context. So really giving them to, if you know how to do web development, you're leading workshops and you're assisting on XYZ, don't just kind of play it off with like, oh, I designed a website. Everybody's not designing websites from scratch. So, really being able to maximize off like the language that you use in those resumes. So grant writing, thinking about like how to utilize that as a platform to issue funds back into the Black and Brown community, so really identifying the sustainable program to maximize not only the financial need, but really any aspect to try to address social determinants and combat institutional racism, etc. So just some things, I guess.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that. I love the layers of the work that you're doing, that it's like institutional, it's interpersonal, it's also internal. So you're taking as seriously the hard skills of like what it takes to make it in the job market, as well as hard skills around taking care of yourself and being able to understand and address systemic injustice. So it's a really holistic view. I really appreciate that. So you predominantly work with like Black and Brown youth and in the professional development setting. So I'm curious about what is the most common professional development need that you see arising in those communities? Where do they need support most often?
I think most of the time, Black and Brown youth feel that their perspectives are limited, and oh, maybe I can go work at McDonald's or KFC or like labor work, which, we do need that in our economy. But sometimes I think people are not exposed to different opportunities at an early age. So if that's something that they only know, and don't have exposure to these different experiences. So when we're thinking about like ageism, I think that's one of the biggest things. Um, People tend to want to say, oh, well, they're not old enough. They haven't had enough experiences. But if there are opportunities for students to get into like internships before getting to college or trying to get into the job market, that would be the best place to start, because that does demonstrate leadership and initiative and responsibility to be in an internship. So thinking about the uniqueness from being from San Francisco or the Bay Area in general, with all these different resources around you. Sometimes it takes additional research to find some of these resources. But if you're in organizations or after school groups, or if like if you're part of the NAACP or different like museum groups, whatever the case is, try to find out ways to put yourself in a more professional arena. So thinking, individuals, all thing they have to do is graduate from high school, and they can be a pharmacy tech, a certified pharmacy tech, or a phlebotomist, or you can kind of get into different job markets that's totally different from service work sometimes. So I think that early exposure to some type of program or internship to really develop you to even get into like college programs, or thinking about if you're going to take a software development course that's a year, it still take discipline. But how are you going to put yourself in spaces, or are you going to find spaces to kind of like foster their professional development? So I think oftentimes Black and brown youth wait a little too late to get into markets compared to some of the other counterparts who had experiences, might have been able to work at like family doctor centers, or I worked with my uncle who's a lawyer, and I was able to do an internship that way. So those exposure mechanisms. So finding out like UCSF have programs that people can do that are 16. It's more like laboratory work, but it's still an experience, the Empowering Black Youth Program. We take students up to 13 to 24. OFA, which is with Opportunities for All with HRC. They do internships with individuals as young as 13. So finding ways to put yourself in spaces to like really maximize those skills. I think that's one of the top things I have noticed with Black and brown youth. Sometimes you're 22 when you finally do an internship. So, thinking if you can, especially being from the Bay Area, and most of the time you can, if you find it or you're exposed. But if you get that opportunity to kind of get that intern experience or that fellowship experience, take it.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely hearing from you that the most important thing is for them to be exposed to multiple career fields and to get a chance to either get work experience there, or even just know that it's a possibility for them. I'm thinking about like my 13-year-old self too, and the privilege that I had of being able to volunteer in my high school, right? And having a stipend that you're offering these youth is probably an incredible gift, because there's such a barrier, an economic barrier to internships too, right? Thinking about how so often they're not paid. And in today's economy, like even young folks are needing to work to contribute to household income. So I feel like I was really blessed in my particular circumstance to have the space to do a little bit of volunteering, or to work at like very low wages with very small stipends as a youth, to get experience so that I could tutor. For example, tutoring was my main form of experience, and now I'm a professor. So
Yeah.
it sort of shows you the trajectory. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for that. The next question that I was going to ask were, what are some of the like strengths that your youth actually have? Some like hidden secrets that, we know that there are lots of hidden skills that are kind of Black and Brown youth in particular are not trained to understand in their experiences that maybe white folks or communities of privilege, can say, oh, I had this work at my family's office or whatever. What are those things for your group that they can activate and start to build on for the workforce?
So even thinking about the empowering Black youth students, they were exposed to how creative they are, effective communication, being able to navigate conflict, de-escalation skills. So really maximize off of platforms they already utilize, right? So they use their phone on an everyday basis, but showing them, okay, well, you can make short films on your phone and use iMovie to publish it. Then you put it on YouTube, you do XYZ. So now you're getting a more advanced skill set um, with being able to utilize iMovie. Or if you decide to use Adobe Premiere Rush, which is a step above iMovie, now you're advanced in another software. So finding out, even if you consider it so small, thinking about how you are a creator, or thinking about the being an editor, or thinking about being a director, are you acting, you writing your own poetry, you're being able to design websites. Those are not small skill sets. So being able to maximize off of what you already can do, sometimes being exposed to those skills to bring out that conversation, um, being able to facilitate like leadership development. If you're a fellow at a young age, people are considering you like a leader, because fellows are usually the ones to help facilitate and assist in some type of project, kind of designing projects on their own. And then being able to help be a part of an organization that's going to want to build you up as a individual. So a prime example of that, our Empowering Black Youth program has ended. However, UCSF wants to work with us to evaluate the Empowering Black Youth program. So thinking about it from an anthropology perspective, what the Empowering Black Youth program impact and social impact, for right now, but what it could be in the future, being able to identify how the program has changed some type of social behavior. So thinking about, are you going to be a part of a program who wants to elevate you, constantly foster you each and every year, finding new opportunities for you to be published or be put on those larger platforms. So I think some of the hidden strengths that our youth definitely have is not always fostered, but just you being you is something that makes you stand out as an applicant. And you being able to, you've been able to like edit professionally on TikTok, being able to design content on Instagram or their Snapchat, being able to put music over like the videos, being able to silence the videos. Those are professional skills. People go to graduate school to get those type of skill set, and people do it so easily, less than 30 seconds, like people pay you for that, So thinking about what you consider small, how that can be a big thing. I teach the youth as well how to code like word search puzzles by using like YouTube and then Google Sheets. It only took like 5 minutes to do the video, and the students learn how to do it, and then they can code their own word search. Word search companies are multi-billion-dollar companies. Something that you consider so small, you can make your own calendar. You consider that like a small skill set, but it's organization that's worth millions of dollars off of just making calendars. So if you have a skill, even if you're an artist, thinking about someone who paints, or being able to design using like animation software or whatever, you're doing it just by yourself. You're building your own portfolio. So now how you expressing something that you consider a passion that you love, but realistically it can be translated on your like resume as like a skill set to benefit your own pathway, your own other institutions that you might work with, or being able to build out an infrastructure. So maybe you want to build out art installations for community members to be able to express themselves, and you do it all throughout the year. You know, it's so many pathways you can use from your passions, and that you can really highlight depending on the pathway.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I definitely heard you saying like highlighting the interpersonal skills, the creative skills, and the leadership skills that the youth already have, and sort of like just using those and activating those. I also loved what you said about working with the equipment they already have. It reminded me of something Carrie Mae Weems says. She's an artist, a Black woman artist, and she said, I'm paraphrasing, but she said something to the extent of we're always looking and making excuses for, I need this to do my project. I need this to do my project, without working with what we already do have and noticing that we can activate that. So I don't know if you're aware, but there's a film called Tangerine, and it was actually the entire film was made on an iPhone, and
Yeah.
it's a feature length film. And so that's something that, the youth could really benefit from, that awareness and knowledge that, oh, all I need is my phone and some good footage, and I can make even a feature length film to think about. And then I also really loved what you said about the youth being, especially youth of color, really being at the forefront of social media skills. I know my Gen Z little sister can like watch a TikTok at 2 times speed, speaking really fast, and hear and understand everything, and follow instructions based on a 30-second tutorial, and make stuff like jewelry. She started making her own jewelry off of a TikTok tutorial that she watched. Now, if I watched a TikTok tutorial, I would probably have to pause that, take a lot of notes, and practice a million times before I could make anything. That skill, that translatability, really that deep understanding of just how to use social media is a really strong skill. You're totally right. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. Oh, no problem. My next question is, if folks are feeling under-resourced, so, like maybe your youth or maybe people who are watching this are feeling like, oh, I don't have, even technology. I don't have people who can give me these skills in their professional development. What are some tips that you can suggest for them to build that kind of network? Where should they go? How should they reach out to people?
I definitely think from a community perspective, it's so much to do out here in the Bay Area. So depending on the area, right? I feel like just going to different events. So, Juneteenth finna come up. Just going to events like that where you never know what type of individual you might be meeting, the different opportunities, the connections that you can kind of build. I definitely say start going to community events, start figuring out Black or brown spaces that might be fostering events throughout the year. Find professional Black groups that's in the Bay Area, or organizations that work with teens directly to get some of that exposure, right? Even when you feel like it's something that you are not comfortable with, or something that you never been exposed to, it shouldn't allow you to feel like you shouldn't be in those spaces, right? So just because I graduated with a scientific degree doesn't mean that I can't express myself through spoken word, or being able to like be an innovator, of being able to also be a researcher, but or work in public health. I can do so many things. We as people do so many things at one time, and we kind of limit ourselves to kind of be like, I shouldn't be in this space because I've never been exposed to it, or it might take me a little longer to understand the material. So you kind of push yourself out the race before the race really even got started. So sometimes being willing to be in, even if you are a Black youth and you haven't been exposed to web development, taking that 5-week internship, and now you being able to learn how to code and build out websites. Now you can be your own entrepreneur. Like you never know what those spaces can take you, or where those spaces can take you. So being a little more open-minded, being able to see, maybe you do want to, maybe your dreams to be in the NBA or the NFL or something like that, right? What if that's not an option? However, it could be an option to go into communication for the NBA or the NFL. It could go into marketing for the NBA or NFL, still making six figures, still being exposed, still going to all the games, but you're not necessarily on the player on the floor, but you are a player to that institution. So being able to find how you can be in multiple spaces, regardless if it's not like that dream you thought you was gonna be the basketball player, but here you are the executive for the NBA. Like really, if I can leave you with something, it's basically don't limit yourself in this way of thinking, I can only be in this space in this particular way, because that's simply not true. So, get past imposter syndrome, like you deserve to be in these spaces. So take that opportunity. And I definitely say for individuals to try to figure out what makes them spark, what interests you, and then kind of start Googling. We use Google for everything else. We use our phone for everything else. Type in Black business events in San Francisco. A whole bunch of stuff gonna pop up, right? Pick some of this stuff to go to for free. Some of these events are free. Some of these events you are able to go to and then network. You don't have to spread your whole life that whole day when you're at the event, but just being in a space where sometimes your people not always seen, right? You're not, we stay in the Bay Area, and even though we have a Black presence, it's still not as big in most spaces. So, sometimes you have to do a little more digging to find those spaces. Along with our brown students, sometimes you might need to find a particular group that represents your ethnicity. So like going into putting that search into being in those spaces, or considered to learn a new skill set, or be challenged. You are young and you're open to different spaces. Challenge the narrative as well. Don't be so passive with society, but take charge, assert yourself, and be able to figure out what it is that you want, and then kind of narrow your pathway or either widen your pathway from that approach.
I love that. Yeah, I definitely hear you saying like to be open, to reach out and to not be afraid to build that network. I think that, a lot of us are very nervous about what it takes to engage in that way. And most of the time, personal connections go a long way. So if you're really authentic and you're in space and you're expressing your interests, that's a great, great perspective to hold. And I'm not going to forget that phrase that you said. You can, not be a player on the field, but actually be a player in the institution. Just thinking more openly about what a career in a particular place might look like. It doesn't always have to look like the limelight or the spotlight or the TikTok star or the athlete themselves, but it could be somebody who's working in the background and still having all the opportunity to be connected in that way. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now we're thinking about let's shift as if we're talking to potential employers and hiring managers. What are some misconceptions that you just kind of want to sweep away that they might think about youth workers or Black and brown workers, so that they can start to actually look at these potential, employees with greater openness and invitation and warmth to accept them into their workforces?
Thank you for that question. I think I'll start off with the aspect of not being so judgmental, right? From even perspectives of when we're trying to get into higher education or career placement. For example, I studied biology, right? And I took all these scientific courses. It's kind of hard to measure me as a manager if you ain't never took biophysics or biochemistry. Maybe I did get a C in biochemistry, but that's a course that most people are not taking. So you gotta, instead of trying to hyper criticize or limit or belittle someone, kind of try to figure out where they're coming from. If you have to answer this question that you've never been in these spaces, how can I even successfully say oh, the Black woman is the best person for this spot, because I never been in this space. I might not know where she came from. I don't know, or not willing to know, right? I'm thinking sometimes hiring managers can play this level to be like oblivious, right? To structural racism, to how work cultures play into demise, not being open enough to understand that me as a Black person, I'm not okay today if a Black person just got shot. I'm not okay today if mass shooting just happened in Buffalo. I'm not going to be okay when it just happened on Sunday. You know, being able to build out infrastructures to kind of like fully support someone who's at work anywhere between 40 hours to 50 hours a week, over 160 hours, almost 200 hours, depending on what type of work they're doing. Um, so kind of making sure that your culture, right, has a space for stories that you're not familiar with, or stories you haven't been exposed to, and not being so judgy. You know, sometimes we can help people. Some people not going to know all the skill set right away. Sometimes we might need a little additional help with individuals to get them to spaces. I also think hiring managers or leadership at organizations should think about, are we building up, or we want individuals to kind of like stay at this same level? Do you want to see them move up into the organizations? Do you want to see them starting their own organization? Do you want to be inspired that they work with you and now they're starting a startup because you inspired them in some type of way? So I think that culture in general should be, how far do we want our employees to elevate and aspire? Or is it just, we're going to do the bare minimum? We're going to continue to push off microaggressions, being passive aggressive, being anti-Black, being anti-brown. We're going to keep being misogynistic, or we're going to continue to foster this culture of like white supremacy, or we're going to, actually provide a institution that really wants to progress, like, and shift paradigms. So I think I will suggest or have leaders think about that. Are you trying to shift paradigms, or is this just a stroke for your ego? So I think that's where I'm at.
I love the real talk. You got to give it to them. Yeah, I definitely heard you saying like being open to people's experiences, and also to structural racism, and being able to therefore support a whole person, right? Not just an employee who's clocking in for those 40 hours. That person has a life and experience that you might not be familiar with. So being open to that. I think I also heard you say listening for like skill sets that might be described a different way. So it's like, how are they talking about their skills, and how are the youth or the people, people of color or what have you, are coming to your space and speaking about their skills might be different than what you're used to hearing. So like listening for that, and also offering opportunities for people to grow in the company, or grow their skills while they're working with you. I think it's so important when a job is willing to offer training, for example. Wow, that can be such a gift, right? Somebody might have all the right skills. They're really sociable. They work well with people, maybe they just don't know the software that you're using. Or maybe they've never worked in a company of your type. They've done all this work somewhere else. So a little bit of training can also go a long way, and really can also help integrate people into your staff, right? Like they get to meet other staff members, get trained from them, and then bam, a lot more retention can happen when that happens. That's what I've heard, at least in academia, that if you're bringing in somebody who's, like maybe the only Black person in your department, it's going to be a lot better if you can integrate them with the staff rather than just having them always be that only Black person who just got there. They're a lot more likely to turn over if that's the way it goes.
Yeah, because you have individuals feel like they're welcome to a space. Now I don't have to feel like I forced myself in, or I always have to be the one to speak up. I used to work at the Glide Foundation when I first moved out here, but they used to have like book clubs. We used to go like these real like thought-provoking like literature pieces, and then I think it was every Friday we used to come in and, have discussions, and like even creating a culture like that. If your culture has, or your work culture has mental health days, being able to provide that as a sense of, today I'm not here, and being okay with it, not having to submit extra paperwork, XYZ, just take those days off, and, we'll see you when you get in. Um, so it's so many things, and I think it's once again we are at a critical place in time that I think like the Great Resignation, thinking about where do millennials and Gen Z kind of see themselves in the work culture, and I feel it's totally different from what we have been used to, what we're not willing to tolerate, what we're not willing to fall into. We want to challenge a narrative. As I said, what I love or really love about Code Tenderloin, they allow me the creative freedom to build out the Empowering Black Youth Program, to build out the system. They're not looking at me like, oh, Antwan's a threat. Oh, we can't work with Antwan. He's gonna, outshine the CEO. He's gonna outshine the founder. Like, you want to be in a space where they want you to feel like you the CEO. You can pull, you can run these conversations without the CEO being over your back, and your managers, say they trust you enough to say, this is not just my employee, this is my equal, this is my partner, this is someone helping us elevate. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you were saying about like mental health days, team building days. Those are great. I worked at a job where we had a lot of, we had a collective rest where groups of staff would take a break together for accountability. And we would all like not work for 1 week, 2 weeks at a time. And you and your team are all not working. So you don't even have to, you're not nervous or thinking about things that need to get done at work, because you and your team are all off together, holding each other accountable and relaxing. And I definitely feel you with the Great Resignation. I quit that job, even though I loved it so much. I just couldn't work that hard anymore, even with the breaks and all the other things I had required. So we are in we're in a paradigm shift when it comes to employment, the way people want to work. I even thought about having work from home days, just like, no excuse. Just if you don't want to come to the office today, just don't, and work from home and just let us know. How lovely is that in a space where, we're ravaged with pandemics and daily crises, right? It could be really, really a gift for a lot of people.
Yeah, and then even in the pandemic, everything we thought we couldn't do, everybody was like, "Oh, we can't work from home." Then our whole system, we was
Right.
working from home.
Exactly.
So Zoom, for example, never giving up on your dreams. Zoom been out for years, and then the pandemic came and happened, and it just blew up. You know what I'm saying? So imagine that you've been working on something for so long and never giving up, and see where that space take you, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
but
I'm
yeah.
sure streaming platforms and video platforms like this have taken off. Skype was dying out and Zoom was giving birth in a new way. How nice for them. Yeah, well, speaking of all this like really great advice, and like this whole conversation has really been sort of like a nice warm hug for like young me and all the advice I would have loved to receive. But I'm wondering if you have one or two things that you would wish that someone had told you, or that you had heard as a youth, that you would like to sort of pass on to Black and Brown youth about job readiness and training. What is the one message that they can walk away with?
Um, Never sell yourself short, and being willing to challenge yourself, being willing to challenge like family structures, institutional structures, be able to do it in a way where you're delivering your point without having to shun or, belittle the next person. But at the same time, learn how to stand up for yourself, being able to advocate for when things are wrong, or when you're mistreated or abused, being able to know that you are valued, you should be valued in a space. So I always try to find spaces that's going to challenge you, but they want you there. They want to build you. They want you to become a software developer. They want you to be able to, be leading departments or building your own nonprofits. They're not hating on it, they're embracing it. So, you just think about figuring out who are your people. And sometimes, even when it's not your same skin folks, sometimes a person of color can be your biggest ally in the classroom when you might be the only Black person. Or, really trying to figure out ways to unify each other when you feel, alone in a space. So I think figuring out who you are and what you want to stand for, just always try to figure out opportunities and put yourself in those spaces to want to elevate that.
I love that. Don't sell yourself short. Challenge structures deliberately. That's what I wrote down. Always keep building and find your tribe. Find your tribe. I feel like that's a great way to conclude things. Thank you so much, Antwan, for joining us for this workshop. I hope people bookmark this, save it, replay it for yourself. And if you're interested in finding more information about both Code Tenderloin and the African American Art and Culture Complex, it'll be in the description of the video. So thank you so much for joining us. Save this page for later and share it with your friends. And we'll see you all next time. Thank you.
See you all. Thank you so much.